What's up guys, welcome back to the Lil Maguizy channel. Today we're gonna take one final look at a man in a metal suit. A soldier with a shield, a god, a man who's a doctor, he's a giant green monster, but no, he's whatever. A woman with guns, a man with a bow and arrow, another man in a metal suit, a man who can shrink, a woman with weird powers, a blue woman, a talking raccoon. They all band together to try and defeat, once again, a giant purple bald monster with a weird chin. Let's do it, shall we? Avengers Endgame, starring Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark slash Iron Man, Chris Evans as Steve Rogers slash Captain America, Chris Hemsworth as Thor, Mark Ruffalo as Bruce Banner slash Hulk, Scarlett Johansson as Natasha Romanoff slash Black Widow, Jeremy Renner as Clint Barton slash Hawkeye, Don Cheadle as James Rose slash War Machine, Paul Rudd as Scott Lang slash Ant-Man, Brie Larson as Carol Danvers slash Captain Marvel, Karen Gillan as Nebula, Denai Guerrero as Okoye, Bradley Cooper as Rocket, with Josh Brolin as Thanos. Yeah. So basically, this shit starts off with Hawkeye is under house arrest because of civil war. He's with his family, he has some fun, and then all of a sudden, his family disappear. Can you guess why? I'm gonna give you a wee minute to think. Okay, minute's over. Then meanwhile, back up in space, Tony and Nebula are suffering because they have no food, no nothing, so they're stuck in space, ready to die. Tony sends a very tragic message to Pepper. Then out of nowhere, a beam comes out of the sky and it's Captain Marvel. Meanwhile, back in the Avengers place, Steve is shaved. He's no longer Beard Steve, rest in peace Beard Steve. And then the ship comes down, Bruce, Rhodey, Rocket, Romanoff, and Steve run out, and then they see Danvers and Nebula and Tony come back. Steve comes to help Tony, and then Tony says he lost the kid, and then Cap's like, Tony, we lost. And then, Tony's in critical condition. He's stuck in a wheelchair, he has an IV drip, because, he's been stuck in space for the last, 23 days. So basically, they go search of all the people that died in the snap. And then Tony is like, he decides he has had enough and he decides to argue with Steve, and then he collapses, and then Danvers says she's going to kill Thanos herself. Then, the Avengers locate him on a planet, so they go and find him. And then Thor comes and chops off his gauntlet. And by the way, Thor's a wee bit depressed because, he lost. He was the reason. Maybe it's Star-Lord, but he's dead. He kind of deserved that, to be honest. It turns out Thanos used the stones to destroy the stones. So then Thor chops off Thanos' head. So they have no way of getting the stones. And then Thor just goes away and leaves. And then 5 years later, everyone's all sad and mopey. The director has a cameo. Steve has this counseling group. And Romanoff has her traditional red hair back. She's talking to Rhodey and Danvers, who has a new haircut now. And Nebula and Rocket, and they're, discussing about shit, and Okoye is sitting there like there's an earthquake under the ocean in Wakanda. So then they leave. Then Steve comes and talks to Natasha, and then in the middle of nowhere, the quantum van, it unleashes Scott. And then Scott comes out, thanks to a rat. And Scott comes out and then somehow manages to find his way to the Avengers place, and then talks to Steve and Natasha about time travel. So then they will try to get Tony to recruit Tony about time travel, but Tony is a child and he's not about that life anymore. So then they go talk to Bruce, who's Hulk now. He's literally merged into Hulk. So Hulk agrees to help him, and they figure out time travel. Meanwhile, Tony figures out time travel, decides to join the group, and then Tony gives him his shield back. Then they get the whole team reunited. Rhodey comes, Rocket and Nebula come. And then Rocket and Hulk fly to New Asgard to go get Thor, and Valkyrie's there and Korg's there. Then they go find Thor, and he's a fat mug now. He's not doing. He's just a fat, lonely man sitting in a house in the middle of nowhere, because he's depressed. And then Thor refuses to help them. And then Rocket persuades him by saying there's beer on the ship. Meanwhile, Clint is murdering a lot of people because his family's dead, so he decides to murder a lot of people, and Romanoff comes and tells him that there might be a way to bring them back. So Clint joins them, and they all come together to talk about the stones. And yeah. And so meanwhile, they do the time travel heist. They all time travel to different locations. Tony, Steve, Scott, and Banner, they all travel to New York 2012. Thor and Rocket travel to Asgard 2013. Natasha, Clint, Rhodey, and Nebula, they travel to Vormir 2014, and they separate. And so yeah, meanwhile, they get the Mind Stone, which is cool. Cap fights himself to get the Mind Stone. And then Hulk goes to the Ancient One to get the Time Stone. And then they try to get the Space Stone. But then, due to the aftermath of the Battle of New York, we find out that Hulk hates stairs. So Tony has the Tesseract. He walks in the door, and then past Hulk, busts out. And then past Loki, takes the Tesseract and portals away and promotes a Disney Plus show. So now that they fucked it up, Tony and Steve go to 1970 to get the Space Stone, and Tony runs into his dad. Meanwhile, they travel back to the present, and then back in Vormir 2014, Rhodey and Nebula get the Space Stone, but there's another Nebula there, so Nebula can't travel back in the time. So past Nebula takes on current Nebula, so they all think that past Nebula's current Nebula, and past Nebula's evil. So meanwhile, current Nebula is stuck with past Gamora, and they try to reconcile. And then in Vormir, Red Skull tells them that the only way to get the Soul Stone, you have to sacrifice which one you love. Clint and Romanoff have a battle to see who's going to sacrifice himself. And then Clint jumps, and then Natasha grabs him, and then Natasha has a grappling hook, hooks up to the wall, and then Natasha says, "Let me go, it's okay." And then very tragically, Natasha jumps and falls to her death. Rest in peace, Natasha. It's not like you're gonna get a prequel or anything like that. And so meanwhile, all the Avengers, they travel back to the present. They find out that Nat's dead, so the OG Avengers, they just have to think about her and shit like that. And then meanwhile, they take all the stones and put it on this new gauntlet, and since Hulk is strong enough, he can put them on there. But Hulk burns his arm, and so he snaps and his arm's just burnt. So then Scott looks outside and he thinks it worked. Meanwhile, past Nebula unleashes the spaceship that past Thanos is in, and past Thanos blows up the entire place, and they all scrap with him. Thor gets his hammer back. So Thor gets his hammer and his axe, and the big three, Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, they all go fight Thanos. Thanos beats the hell out of Thor, and then his hammer gets picked up and it gets thrown at Thanos, and it comes back to Captain America. So Captain America is in fact worthy. And then Thanos destroys his shield. That's when Captain is ready to take on his whole army alone. And then Sam comes in and says, on your left. And then a portal comes, and then Black Panther, Okoye, Shuri, all the other Wakandan warriors come out. Sam flies out. Another portal opens up. Doctor Strange, Drax, Mantis, Star-Lord, and Spider-Man are there. Bucky and Groot come. Scarlet Witch come, and Valkyrie and all the other ones come. Wong and all his other mates come. And then Giant Ant-Man comes out. Pepper in an Iron Man suit comes out. And then Hulk, Rocket, and Rhodey come out. And then they all band together to try and defeat Thanos. And Cap finally says, Avengers assemble. And then they all come to defeat Thanos. Tony and Peter reunite. And then Tony tells Strange that, you said 1 out of 14 million you would, right? Tell me this is it. And then Strange is like, if I tell you what happens, it won't happen. And then, Thanos gets the stones. And then Captain Marvel comes. Where in the living hell was she the whole movie? What was the point in promoting her in this if she wasn't even fucking in it? Yeah. So then Captain Marvel comes. And then Thanos punches her. That's that. And then he gets the stones. And then Strange puts up his hand and is like, to Tony, and is like, and then Tony now knows what he must do. And then Tony grabs the gauntlet, tries to get Thanos, but Thanos punches it, and now Thanos said he's not going to destroy half the universe, he's going to destroy all the universe. So then he says, I am inevitable, and then he snaps. But wait, he doesn't have the stones. Iron Man has the stones, and then he says this, and I am Iron Man. And then all of Thanos' army disintegrate, including Thanos. And it's too much for Tony to handle, so he dies of his wounds. Rest in peace, Tony Stark. So meanwhile, everyone's back together, families are reunited. Also Wasp is there. Wasp joined the battle, I forgot to mention her. And then they all have a funeral for Tony. And then Clint and Wanda say that Natasha and Vision know that they won. So then, yeah. Cap, Bruce, Hulk, and Bucky. No. Cap, Bruce, Sam, and Bucky. There you go. Cap goes and takes the stones and Thor's hammer back to their original timelines. And then Cap goes back in time, and then Hulk tries to get into the current time, but it's not working. And then Bucky spots a random dude, and then tells Sam to go over to him, and guess who it is? It's Captain America, but he's fucking old now. He's Joe Biden. And then he gives Sam the shield, and then Sam shakes his hand, and he has a ring on his finger. And then Sam's like, you want to tell me about her? And then, meanwhile, back in the 1940s, Steve time traveled to be with his girl, to be with Peggy, and then he lives happily ever after. And he's probably not going to save the world from future events that's going to happen in the world. At the end, there's no after credit scene, but the credits is like this montage of all the old movies, and like all the cast names comes, and the OG Avengers get their signatures. Yeah. So that is the end of Iron Man, Captain America. Yeah, that's the end of them too. We're never going to see them again. So it's very sad. The Infinity Saga comes to an end. Overall thoughts. It's very good, but quite emotional. Not very emotional. There was not a lot of death I thought it would be. But yeah. I'll see you next time, where we take a look at a boy in a spider suit, and he travels across the world to go and fight a man with green powers who summons these these elemental monsters. Goodbye.